Hello and welcome to a Life Too Sweet podcast. My name is Dana. I am a Christian and I know my identity comes from God. That's where my identity comes from. And today I want to talk about this because this is the biggest problem with our country today. This is the biggest problem with the church today. This is the biggest problem with Christians who do not know the Father. Christians who are Christian in name only. Unfortunately, there are many of them. And the problem is they have not returned back to God so that God can guide them. And God could be the identity of us. And I'm going to get into that today. That's what we're going to talk about. So let's get started about identities. And I've talked about this actually in my last podcast. I gave a little bit about my identity and how I was a little lost in my identity. And throughout the day, some things came up. And I was like, wow, identity is the biggest issue in our country today because we all have some type of identity. And with that identity, we have to live our lives through that identity. And when we live our lives through that identity, we stay out here. We stay outside of the presence of God, outside of the present. The present is where God is. He is in the present. Stay in the presence of God. Pray without ceasing. Staying in the moment, staying with God because He is in the present. And that's why it's really important. And unfortunately, our preachers lie. Our preachers do not know God and do not speak truth. And that is the problem because we go out into the world to look for things because we are living for the world, in the world. We are in the world, not of it. That's what we're supposed to be. But many Christians are living in the world and they are of it as well. And they use worldly ideas, worldly ways of taking care of issues that they have instead of going to the source, which is God, and repenting, as I talk about. So let's kind of get into that so that you kind of understand what I'm talking about. It's like, what are you talking about? The church is lying to me? You're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. But the crazy thing is, I never knew any of this. I only knew it when I repented and went to the person that I resented. I had to go and forgive. I had to walk and go and forgive. It doesn't say, and God doesn't tell us to walk up to the altar and we are saved. And, it talks about, believing in Jesus, but you will believe when you get out of your state of not believing, right? So let's get into this identity thing. Identity. So what we do as people, basically, we live for God or we live for Satan. That is what we do. That God, you know how Satan said he's going to deceive all the people? Well, he deceives everybody. We all get deceived. He has deceived us. But we have a way back because Jesus died and gave us that way back. And once we die and be born again of the Spirit, now we can live in our true identities and find out who we truly are because Satan gives us our identities. And he gives us our identities by anger and fear and resentment. And let's think about being angry. Now, if I look at myself as a white woman, I'm a white woman. So I have two identities here. I'm white and I'm a woman. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to protect my whiteness and being a woman. And when somebody comes after my identity, well, they're going to hear from me. And I'm going to go after them because I have anger, because my identity is so important to me that the minute it gets touched, we have to go after it. And now the problem is that identity is not my true identity, right? That's the identity that Satan gave me, right? He gave me that anger, and it usually happens in the home, right? Just think about it. When we're young, we see our parents and we see what our mother's doing wrong. We see what our father's doing wrong, and we start judging them, right? Because Satan is in our head telling us, look at that person. See what they're doing? They're hurting you. They're trying to get you. And he's telling you these things in your head. In your head sometimes you know what somebody's thinking even before they tell you. Like there's times when I just thought certain things about my father because my mother said it. And I almost didn't question it, right? Because it's like, well, she's saying it over and over again. I'm going to start believing it. And she's going to say, hey, he's going against women. Oh, he's going against women. And I'm going to go with it. And I've seen that happen for me in the past. And I see that happening with others because a lot of times too, we will identify with something that's happened to us. So let's go with women. Now, a lot of women claim to have been sexually abused or harassed and things like that. And so how does that harassment really happen? Is that real? Is it in our heads? Well, let's take a look, right? So say when we're younger, like for me, when I was younger, somebody talked to me and he tried to do something, but he never did, right? And I was young, and I first I didn't say anything about it, but I told my brother, and he went and told my mother. And I was processing it, and I'm going to be honest with you, I wasn't upset with this person, I wasn't mad at this person, I was just a little confused. And I told my brother, and now my brother told my mother. And now what my mother did was she overreacted. She got upset. She made it a big deal. She stopped talking to the kid's mother, and she was telling me how this was such a big deal. And now something that I dealt with, I told this person to leave me. Like I pushed him off, and I told him no, and he stopped. And I don't totally remember, and it didn't go anywhere. It did not go anywhere. And I did the right thing. I stopped it 100%. Now, if I would have stopped it and my mom never knew, most likely that wouldn't have been a big issue. Just think about it. It wouldn't have been a big issue. But I told my brother, he told my mother, and she kept talking and kept talking. I'm not letting anybody touch you, and you got to be careful. And she made such a big deal of it that it traumatized me. It traumatized me so much that I thought anytime a man looked at me, it was he wanted to hurt me. And I took that because my mom would tell me things like, if a man goes to touch you, you push him off. And she's telling me all these things to do, but I did the right thing. I handled it perfectly. I really did handle it well. But in my head, I started thinking maybe he did more to me. And I started taking something that was very little that I knew was little. I really knew it was. But once I told, and I'm going to be honest too, I didn't think it was a big deal, but then my mother always talked about that. If a man touches you, if he looks at you, if he looks at you in a certain way, and she was really big on all that. It was very big. We talked about it a lot, and this was in the 80s when it was really a big thing about talking to children about being touched inappropriately. They made it a very big deal. It was all over the news. It was always on. Always. I remember it being a big deal. So the TV's making it a big deal. My mom's making it a big deal. Now I'm traumatized because I seen that. Now, if nothing would have happened, my mom wouldn't have told me anything about all these things. The TV, right? It wouldn't have showed all those things on the TV. Most likely, I would have gotten over it, and it wouldn't have been a big deal, and it wouldn't have traumatized me, right? Now, that's the world. My mother was in the world, right? She's telling me, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to handle it, and she's teaching me. But the teacher, when my identity is in Christ, in God, it is within me. God is within us, and he will show us the right ways of how to handle things. And so when I'm a young child, we're still close to God because we're not traumatized that much yet, right? Before we're traumatized, those traumatizing things just like that will traumatize me so much that I will not be able to handle things because now I'm going to overreact. And so as I got older, I started overreacting. Anytime a guy would look at me, he's trying to hurt me. And in my head, this was true. And anytime it happened, he was an evil man. And I would always say, oh, I remember that guy, he was evil. I remember that guy, he was evil. I remember that guy, he was evil. But then let's look at the man, okay? Now, the man is subject to the woman sexually. That's why the men, they're so addicted to women, if you can notice that. Because as I talked about, there is an order in Adam and Eve. If you want to go to Genesis and read the story of Adam and Eve, it will really explain all this, right? The woman was deceived by Satan, right? She was deceived, but when she went and gave the fruit to Adam, he believed the woman. Now he's subject to the woman. He's separated from his father. No relationship with his father anymore. Now he's subject to the woman. And that's the issue right there. So now the man's God is the woman, right? So think about it. Now the men need the women. I mean, you could watch this. Many men are like that. I've had that issue before with men where they wanted me so much. And they loved me so much. They didn't even love themselves and they couldn't live without me. It was really interesting. And I've seen it many times. And I mean, the woman could be horrible to him and kick him out, and he comes back. And he comes back for the sex, because he's addicted to her. And so that identity is the man's identity. So a lot of times when a man would see me and say I'm attractive to him, he's going to come after me. He's going to sexually be attracted to me. And me getting upset and scared of him, I would not have done that if I would have handled that correctly. I handled it. It was over when I was a child, but my mom traumatized me. And it was a traumatic situation that happened for me, and I dealt with it for so many years. Now, that's identity right there. See how I took something that was small, I took care of, I handled it. It was no problem. Now I know the next time something like that would happen, I would handle it calmly and quietly. I don't even think I would remember like the way he looked at me, because I never thought he looked at me that way. But then my mother's talking about looks, and so now I'm traumatized with that. You see, all those little things that never happened, now they happened, right? We even seen that, like I said before, with AOC when she was talking about the people coming into the building and how it was a white male. She had the same issues that I had. Now she has an issue. Her identity is of her race. So now anybody that's outside her race will look at them. They're coming at me this way. So you see how our identities really keep us away from God and keep us angry, because I became angry at men, right? AOC does not like men. She talks about it all the time. She does not like men. Just listen to her. Listen to how she talks. And many women are like that, because women are very controlling. They want to control. They want to be God. They want to be in control. Just like Satan. They have Satan's nature until they return back to God. I know it. I did the same thing. I try to control everything in my life and everyone in my life. I did try to control it. And I never want to admit it, but I did. And I used to say, I don't want to control anybody else, but I wanted to control my life. I wanted to tell everybody how to live theirs. And if you live this way, you'll be great. You know what I'm saying? And that's the same thing. That's playing God. And the only way to get away from that is to find my true identity. And now I had these different identities. And as we return back to God, he will get rid of these identities. But let's talk about what issues this could have in our country and why our country is going through what they're going through. And a lot of it is race. They're going with this race card, and they've been going with this race card for a very long time. And it's been building up and building up and building up. And I think about it too when I was a child in the 80s, learning about Black history and learning about it in a way that it showed that the white people were so bad, that they only did it because of they were Black. That's what I believed, because that's what they showed. That's exactly what they wanted me to see, right? But then when you go back and look, it was always about money and power. Everything is about money and power. And if I take your identity and say, your identity is you're Black, you're a Black male, then you have that identity. Or if you're a white male and you identify as that, well, now anybody that's outside of your identity, you're going to fight with. You're right. You're going to be like, if you don't agree with the identity part, and that's what they talk about, identity politics. If you don't agree with my identity, then we're going to fight. We got a problem, because I'm right, you're wrong. This is the way it is, and I'm going to make you live it. I'm going to play God and be the judge and jury of you. And we're having that happen in our country, and it takes time. It takes time to manipulate a group of people. And as this manipulation has been happening, now it goes to, we manipulate the races of the white race, saying you're bad because you're white. Now, it took time, right? I mean, I'm talking about the 80s when I read a lot of this stuff. I thought it was just because they were Black. I didn't realize when you go back and look, it was about, they're going to they're getting power and they're getting money. They have things. Let's take it from them. And when you look at the leaders are making a lot of money. I'm going to explain to you something that's crazy to me. Now, I know that people remember the Michael Brown case, and the beginning of the Michael Brown case, I really believed that the hands up, don't shoot. I believed it, but I didn't run with it. I just kind of listened to it. But then when I found out months later that he was in the car with the cop going after his gun, he tried to take his gun out of the holster. Okay. So basically Michael Brown went into this man's cruiser, tried to get the gun from him and kill him. Okay. He went for his gun. Okay. Let's think about that. You're that cop. I'm that cop. That happens to me. Then I go and look on the TV and they're telling me that this guy came with his hands up and I just shot him. First off, I'm traumatized because this man tried to kill me. He tried to take my gun, right? I'm probably overreacting about that. Now they want to put me in jail because of something that I didn't even do. I mean, I'm thinking, oh my God, I was traumatized. They're going to help me. I might even need help. I might even need psychiatric help. I mean, this is worldly thinking, right? I might need some help because I'm going to be traumatized, especially if my identity is not in God. I'm going to be traumatized. I'm not going to know how to handle this situation. But now I am the criminal. And now let's think about the family of Michael Brown. They got like $2.3 million or something like that. They've made money, buku money. And I'm going to tell you something. They probably know the truth, but I'm not going to say that they do or they don't, but the truth is there. I don't know if they were at the trial, but when this stuff was coming out, I was just like, wow. And I didn't think about how important that was. But think about it. Now they're in the spotlight. There's people, and there's even people in churches, black churches, that are not of God. Listen, if anybody is okay with what happened in that situation and they think that they're a child of God, come on. I don't even know how we can even see that, okay? I mean, it's just so obvious. And that's the reason why we have to get back to our true identity so we can see these things, so that we can help, because we know that nobody else is helping. So let's get back to the story. So, I'm seeing this trial and it's right there. And Michael Brown's family knows the truth. They have to, okay? They have to know the truth. But sometimes our identity is so strong, maybe we don't see the truth because we see this fake truth, right? Like I saw the fake truth on how men were looking at me. And I believed it. I believed all men. There were so many people that were raping. I really believed that this many women were being raped. And I'm a conservative, and a lot of the conservatives were talking about, oh, it's not true. The numbers are wrong. And I'm like, that doesn't make any sense, because most people I know have told me that this happened to them and it's happened to me, and all these guys, the way they treated me. But now that I understand, that I return back to God, I can see that the men are subject to me as a woman when they are fallen, in the fallen state, when they are not of God, and when their identity is not in God, because he will show you our true selves and those fake things that Satan will tell us, and our thoughts. And he will tell us, oh, that guy's trying to hurt you. You see, he's like the other guy. And then he brings up the past, right? He brings up that past. And then that is becoming really part of my identity. I'm a woman who has been abused. And that's my identity. And so anybody around me that I consider an abuser, they're an abuser. And look at all the people accusing. Like a lot of these women are accusing people. Now, if a guy makes jokes, now that is considered sexual harassment. So now, because I keep hearing sexual harassment, now I'm traumatized about sexual harassment. I'm going to go into the workplace and there's going to be sexual harassment. I mean, I was in radio. Definitely it was sexual. It was always, when you want to get far in this company, you better, talk to the guys, because a lot of the people in entertainment are really far away from God. I mean, they're far away from God, and they're living lifestyles that definitely Satan's loving. Satan loves you to live in that lifestyle. He loves to keep you sick and suffering. He loves it. And he will deceive you. He will deceive the woman, and he will deceive every man and child. He talks about it, right? He will deceive. And we believe this stuff to be real. We believe this stuff to be true because our identity is not in our true identity. And this is so important, because this is the whole reason why our country is falling apart. And everything that is bad, they say is good. Everything that is good, they say is bad. And we see it, we see it. But us as Christians who live of the world, there's a problem here. Right? because when I had these issues, I wanted to go see a psychologist. And then if I think about it too, they're a Christian psychologist, but they're using the same methods, right? They're using the same intellect, the method of the world. Now think about that. We are supposed to be in the world, not of it. But because our identity is not in God, it is in the world. We will not change. We can preach from the Bible, we could read the verses, but we cannot understand it until we return to God. We cannot understand what our true identity is until we return back to the Father. This is the most important part, and this is why identity is so important. It's so important, and it's crazy because God revealed this to me just listening to Jesse Lee Peterson, listening to God as he's revealing these identities, and that he's taking away those spirits, that I'm starting to really see that identity and how deep that identity was, and how deep each identity kept me outside. It kept me in the present. I mean, it kept me in the future or in the past. It kept bringing up my past. And I used to call that, what is that? I forgot, I forgot what they call that. But I used to like intellectualize it and think, okay, this is how your brain works. This is how we were wired, to where our brain would find like old pictures from the back and remind us, to help us, to show us things. I was so lost in, and this is something that the subconscious, that's it, the subconscious, right? I used to think it was the subconscious. And I mean, people go to school and they're so smart, right? The intellectuals, but it's so not true, because every thought is a lie. It comes from Satan, because Satan wants to keep you out of the present. And you hear these intellectuals talk and they sound so smart. I mean, they did before I returned to God, because he shows me that it's just craziness. But it made so much sense. Like, it was like, all right, the subconscious puts, pictures of the past in your past, and then in your head, and then they pop them up when you need them. And it's like, wow, or that's so crazy. It's so crazy that I was so blinded, because my identity was into my intellect, right? That was my last identity, trying to be an intellect, trying to be smart and understand things. And it's like Satan gets me every time. He's deceiving. He plays God. He plays God to a T, and he still does it to me, and as I grow in God, I'll be able to see those better. And I have been trying to stay in the moment, with God, pray without ceasing, like I said, with God. In the moment, he is here in the present, be in the presence of God, the present, right? He's with us in the presence. Satan wants to get you all over the place. But as God takes away those spirits, he takes away those identities that came from your mother, right? A lot of them came from your mother or came from Satan. And once we're traumatized, that spirit is in us and it controls us. It controls us because we are a spirit. We are either a spirit of God or with a spirit of Satan. And God will change our heart right away. Right away. Took away the anger, bam, gone. No anger, no fear. No fear, no resentment, because I forgave and I cannot resent. And then I can live out the 10 Commandments. I couldn't do it before. But today I'm able to do it without even trying, because I am unable to do anything. And I'm starting to see it as I go. And as our identity becomes my identity becomes God's identity. But it's like really who I am. It's like, this is who I truly am. And the coolest part is I remember being this way a little bit, like seeing these things at a young age. I remember it. And it's just like he reminds us of who we truly are and our true identity. And I talk about identity because our identity is what's killing us. And our anger is what's killing us too. Because let's think about, so we talked about identity of different identities. And now I've noticed that people are getting angry, really angry. So I have a friend who is into politics, and he finally woke up in one way and seen what the Democratic Party was really about. But he's getting angry at them. And I'm looking at the comment, And all the comments on this one post, he talked about how I'm done. I hate these people. And I'm like, oh no. Because what do? We judge them, and then we're going to be God, right? We're going to be the judge and the jury, and I'm going to tell you what you need to do and how it's going to happen, and I'm going to do it. And I started hearing people say, yeah, F them and this, and I'm just like, whoa. Now look at what's happening. My identity is in, I'm right, the left is crazy, and I'm hating them because I have anger. A little bit of anger can be pushed into more anger by watching what's going on. I mean, we see what's happening, right? We see what's happening to our country. It is going downhill fast, and we're sitting back and our leaders are doing nothing about it. Because the truth is they want power and they want money, right? Fake power and fake money. Because the truth is God is the one that's in control. And when we try to play God, believe me, our lives are a mess. Just watch anybody who tries, takes you to court, has that anger. You see they're suffering. They could have money up the yin yang, but they're suffering. They're killing themselves. They're on medications. They're angry and fearful, resentful. You can tell by their personalities. You can just see. It doesn't matter how much money you have. It doesn't matter. But when you have God's true identity and true love, and what real love is and what your real identity is, you will see that anger that you had was not of you. It was uncontrolled. You could not control it. You could go to a psychologist, but what could they do? They can put you on drugs, and then you're angry and you can't do nothing because you're like, I'm out of it. I'm out of it. I'm on drugs. Or you just feed that anger, and then you lash out. And that's exactly what happened at the Capitol building. And that's what's happening with people who are like into their whiteness, right? I mean, if I identify as white, and say it's a white male, because white men are really they're getting it lately, right? And they're weakening the men. Of course, they're weakening the men. And the white man was the ones that were a little bit stronger, right? They weren't believing in their leaders. They were going against the leaders a lot of times. Like the blacks kind of fell for the leadership. And the leadership stared them into, we'll take care of you while they're making money and everybody else is staying poor, right? Well, now the white man they're coming after the white man. And say I'm a white man, and that's how I identify, white male. That's the identification. Now, if I'm an angry person, I'm going to try to handle it with anger, and I'm going to handle it in the wrong way. I'm going to handle it in the way Satan wants me to handle it, and he's going to destroy me. His whole job is to have you destroy yourself. So I'm angry, and now I'm going to hate somebody because they're black, and that's going to be my reason. Even though it's not the reason, you're just hating. You're seeing something that is going on, and it might be right. It might be right. But because you're so angry, you're going to be unable to handle it. And so that's why a lot of those people, they're going to start coming out. And they're coming out a little bit, those people that identify as white males. And they're coming out and they're going to mess up, right? They're going to go into the Capitol building with anger. And they're going to go, you see, we got to do this. And, because our leaders, right, the Republican Party, they're not for us. They're for power. They want power and money. They are the same as the Democrats. They go on TV and start talking, but they do nothing. Just remember, when we had the House and Senate, the Republicans, they did nothing. They talked on TV and then went against it because he said bad words. It's not because he said bad words. It has nothing to do with that. They want power, and they knew they would lose it. They want to stay rich. They don't care about you. When a real man comes in and does it for you like Trump did, they hate that. Just look at Trump too. Look at him after 4 years and how good he looked. He didn't look any older. He wasn't stressed. He wasn't frustrated. He just handled it like a man. No anger, no fear. That's what you can do when you return to God. That's what your identity becomes. You will have strength beyond all understanding. You will have love and peace beyond all understanding. It will be amazing. That's why I talk so much about returning back to the Father and forgiving and repenting, because then you can handle it with perfect love as Trump did. Yes, he did handle it with perfect love. Yeah, he said, called them names and stuff like that. But is that important? I mean, really, he was joking and being funny. Yes, it hurts my feelings. But when you know God, you don't have feelings. They go away. That anger and fear and resentment and really happy and then really sad, you will never have that again when you go to God. You will not have to go to a psychiatrist or psychologist and keep you on drugs, because this is of the world. How, as Christians, are we of the world? You tell me that. Tell me that. How? I don't know. Right? I know you're not of God. I wasn't of God. I did 4 years Bible thumping, going to church, singing and dancing, realizing that nothing was changing in my life. I was still angry. I still had fear. I had fear of everything. I lived in the world. I was of the world. 100% I was of the world. I can't blame myself. I can't blame anybody else. I can't blame anybody else. Sorry. I have to blame myself, because I sat back and I didn't do anything. I was lost. But when I asked the question, why am I so angry? God, show me myself. Show me why I'm angry. Show me why I'm not living in the spirit that it talks about in the word. Where is it? I'm still not seeing it. I'm seeking, help me. Then he allowed me to see. He allowed me to see how angry I was at my mother. Oh my gosh, was I? And I'm like, well, I know what she needs to do and I deserve to hurt her, and she deserves this and she deserves that. Playing God, getting more angry and more angry. And I started realizing it. But then I just was like, I don't like doing this. Something's wrong here. I know that I'm living wrong. And this reading the Bible hasn't getting me any better. And once I opened my eyes and I started watching this Savage Moments of Jesse Lee Peterson, and I'm listening to this guy going, this guy is pretty funny, but he's saying some stuff I've always thought. I've always known this stuff, but I never was able to say it the way he says it. And then when he said, forgive your mother, you resent your mother, and talking to somebody else. And I said, yes, I resent my mother. How can I stop resenting her? Because I don't have the right to resent her. I mean, I knew I had no right to resent her. I knew I had no right to resent anybody, because I knew that I was no good. I knew it. There was no denying I was no good. Even when I thought I was a Christian and I was reading the Bible, I knew I was no good. I knew I still had thoughts of hurting others, and I knew that I wanted to destroy people. I knew it, and I was like, this isn't right. There's something wrong here. I don't have perfect peace. Why would I want to destroy somebody else? I can't be peaceful. If I want to destroy somebody else, it doesn't matter what they did. Something's not right with me. I mean, I knew it. But I was very blessed to be able to hear Jesse Lee Peterson and hear his message. And I already knew all that stuff. I was like, he is so right. I know this stuff, but there's something holding me back. This identity of anger, this identity of being outside of God and being in the world and being of the world was wrong. And I knew something was wrong. I knew it. There was no denying it. But my ego was just getting so big, The world was telling me, Dana, you're doing so great. You're so strong. You're just a strong woman. And I really wasn't a strong woman. I was a weak woman. I was really weak. No doubt about it. I was weak, angry, fearful. I feared everything. I feared myself. I was just so fearful, right? Crazy. But it's important that we return back to God, because if we don't return back to God, it's just going to get worse. It's just going to get worse. I mean, they're weakening our military. They're using our military for personal gain. They're using our military for political power. They're talking about finding out if you're a Republican and not putting in Republicans. I guess they just brought like some people into Washington because a woman said something about a certain race or a certain country, and they went in and got all these people from that same country to walk to her office. okay, in the military, walk in her office with a bunch of them marching in America. In America. Does this not wake you up and say these people don't care about us? They want to weaken and kill our military. That's the only thing that we all together we need. Republicans, Democrats, the lost, the ones that aren't lost, the Christians and the non-Christians, we all deserve to have that in our Constitution. This is America. They're using the military against a party? Military against a party. Hello? China? Communist China? I mean, do we not see this? You got to wake up. Seriously, you got to wake up, you know? If we don't wake up, we're going to lose this country and we're going to be enslaved. This is the truth, okay? They already have, in Indiana, they're doing reparations. What do you think's going to happen next? Where do you think they're going to go next? And they're doing it, they're giving money to housing. You don't think they're going to come after your housing if you're white? You don't think they're going to come after your housing? You don't think that's next? They just said they're going to give money for housing. And then I'm hearing that that's not enough. The amount of money they're giving, I think it was like $25,000 or something. It's not enough. It's never going to be enough. People who do not take responsibility for themselves, they will never have enough. You will never give them enough. You will never see this until you return to God. That is the truth. You won't hate. I don't hate them because it's our own fault. We're weak. We're weakening our men and women. We're the worst. Okay. We are the worst. We hate men so much because they're the men. They're the representative of Christ, and we got to weaken them. We got to weaken them, and we got to get to the children fast. Bring up the children. Bring up the weak. Bring up the ones who are suffering the most. Bring them up. Put them on top. I mean, come on. Christians, people who are reading the Bible and not changing, we've got to return back to God, or we're going to lose everything. That's just the way it is. The more we live for Satan and the more we change our country into that, the weaker we're going to be and the more enslaved we're going to be. They enslave your mind and then they're going to enslave your body. I mean, this is it's just I just can't understand how people can't see this. It's right in your face. Boom, in your face. But our identity is in whatever our identity is in, and it's so important. And we can't lose our stuff, right? Did you just see the thing with the Osborne? What happened with her? She went against two people against that Merkel, that interview, and they're saying that it wasn't racist, and that was it. She spoke her mind, and I was like, good for you. Good for you. You spoke up, because if we don't speak up, we're going to be shut down, and once one side is shut down, that's it. And that's what they're doing. You're a racist. And then they threaten to take away her job. So what does she do? Apologizes. What does she do? Apologize. There was another guy I just saw in an interview. He was talking about that they wrote what he needed to say and how he needed to say his apology. An SNL guy from SNL. And he was hired and fired the same day. And they told him he had to apologize. And I don't think he apologized. I'm not really sure because I didn't listen to the rest of it. And listen, I only hear his one side. But do you really think that they're not telling him that they have to apologize or you lose your job? Is your job more important than truth? Right? It is more important unless you return to God, because you know that God will protect you. He will take care of you because you speak truth. If you do it in the right way and you speak truth, things will happen in your life and you will know how to handle it. But when you're not of God, you're going to give in. This is a person who's not of God. She, Osborne, right? She's not of God, but she saw truth, but she couldn't handle it, because if she was a true believer in God, she would be willing to lose her job. She'd be willing to lose her reputation and God. I mean, she would be willing to lose her reputation. She would be willing to lose her job and it would be no problem. Because think about it. First off, the lady's rich, right? She got a lot of money. If she speaks for truth, then more people will be on her side. And they might be quiet right now. But as we fight back in the right way, people will listen. And people will start going, hey, you know what? She spoke up. She lost her job and nothing happened. Like Trump. They want to kill Trump. They want to destroy Trump. Why do you think that is? Because he's of good. And the children of Satan are pissed. They're pissed, right? They're angry. And they want to judge. Hello, who does this? Who plays God? Satan. They're playing God. And believe me, they're suffering. You may think that they're not suffering because it looks good on the outside, but then their families go against them. Once they turn in, they will turn on you just like that. Angry people, they're your friend, right? Everybody on The View, no, it wasn't The View. It was The Talk. Everybody on The Talk, they all were friends with Miss, what's her name? I forgot her first name too. Everybody was on her side. Oh, they all were with her. I mean, The Talk's been going on for a really long time. The minute you disagree, you're evil. We're going to take you and we're just going to rip you apart. You notice that? Those people are not your friend. Angry people will go against you just like that. Just like that. Because they're angry. They don't have any love. Anger, when you have anger, you have no love. You do everything out of something that you want to get. And that is another realization I had too. Realizing that everything I did was for me. It was only for my own good, what I could get out of it. Everything. There was not one thing I did for me. Doing the coaching, it was to fill my ego so I could feel better about myself. Well, look at me. Look what I did. And then when it wasn't working and people weren't changing, I judged myself. I'm not good enough. Playing God. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's up and down and up and down when you're a child of Satan. He doesn't care. Just like these children of Satan do not care. Those women on The Talk hated her from the very beginning because when when you hate one man, you hate all. When you love every man, you love every man. You cannot love one and hate the other. You can't do that. You cannot be of God and be of Satan at the same time. You can't do it. And perfect love is love of everybody. True love of everybody. Not emotional love, because emotional love fades. The minute somebody disagrees with me, I don't like them anymore. Right? Be honest with yourself. It's true. Deny it. Deny it. You're only killing yourself. You're only dying. You're either living or you're dying. And if we want to live and we want to get out of this rut that America is in, we have to return to God. So I'm excited about this transformation that I'm going through. And I know how important it is, because seeing what's happening to our country is so crazy to see it in my lifetime, to see how this transformed into what it is today. And the only way for us to get back to the order is to return back to God, return back to the Father, repent, forgive. Ask God, what's going on with me? Why am I so angry? Who do I need to forgive? And help me go and forgive them, because we have to repent. Repentance is the most important. The sin is hatred. The sin is resentment. We are unable to hate. We cannot hate our Father and love God. We cannot hate anyone and love God. It doesn't happen. We can't do it. And the only way to do that is to return back to the Father. The way to get there is repentance. And I would tell you, most likely it's going to be your mama. Most likely it's going to be your mother. Seriously? Most likely it is. But take some time. I always talk about Jesse Lee Peterson's Silent Prayer. It's on YouTube. You can go to Bond, Rebuilding the Man on YouTube. You can go to his website, rebuildingtheman.com. You can also go on podcasts and get it. I like the one that says Be Still and Know, and that one's on the podcast. And it's really awesome. It calms you down. Even if you don't think that you need to forgive your mother, be still and know. Be still and know God in the presence of God. Be in the present. Get those voices and Satan in your head, right? Those thoughts that just keep going and going. You're like, how can I stop these thoughts, man? I can't sleep. It really helps you. And you'll be able to see God. You'll be able to see truth. You will change, and we'll know how to deal with what's going on in our society and how it's getting so much worse. Nobody's getting better. I don't know. But if you want to handle it right, not with anger, because we see what the identity happens. We see when our identity is in the world and not of Christ, how we handle our lives. So let's return back to God. Forgive. Like I said, Lee Peterson, he also has a show, JLP show. Check that out. And if you want to get a hold of me, well, this is my channel, A Life Too Sweet on YouTube, A Life Too Sweet Coaching, which is on my, it's on all major podcast sites. It's my podcast, A Life Too Sweet Coaching. Check that out. Also, I am on Instagram, A Life Too Sweet. Check me out there. Talk to me. Subscribe. Ring the bell. Subscribe. I really want to get the truth out. I really want to get God out there and just what he kind of revealing to me and everything. I'm not a preacher. I'm just somebody who been seeing some things and I'm just talking about it. I'm enjoying doing this podcast, but our identity is what's keeping us stuck. It's keeping us lost. If it's not in Christ, it's of the devil. 100%. That's it. So please check out me, like I said, on YouTube and my podcast, A Life Too Sweet Coaching. Guys, thank you so much for checking out my podcast. It's been really fun. Let's try to get this message out. Share this. Ring the bell, I said. Subscribe. Do all those good things, and good things will come to you. No, I'm just playing. But thank you guys again for checking out my podcast, A Life Too Sweet. And remember, God is good all the time. You guys have a good one, and I will see you in the next podcast. Goodbye.